Okay, so worksheet time. This technically, if you'll notice, says review. So this is something that initially was supposed to be practice for another time. So I just know that the more you practice, the better. Hopefully you got this in time for it to be, doable. I'm just going to give you an example of one of them. It doesn't really matter which one. You'll notice a lot of them are similar, but I think I'm going to start with this one down here. So when you take your two factors from your first binomial, you'll separate them. We have the term that is 2x. We have the term that is -3. And for the second factor, we have the term that is just x and the term that is -1. Once you've written those here, you multiply everything out. So of course, factor, if you remember the definition, is something you multiply together. So it's this whole thing, parentheses, times this whole thing, parentheses, that we're multiplying. And so in order to do that, we multiply all of the terms separately. So this is a multiplication box, 2x times 1x. If you're more comfortable putting a 1 there, please do, 2x squared. -3 times 1x is -3x. 2x times -1 is -2x, and -3 times -1 is a positive. Negative times negative is positive. So once you have all of the terms that are multiplied, these are all your answers when you separate them. You have a 2x squared, you have a -3x, you have a -2x, and you have a +3. So I separate all of those terms with a plus or minus sign. This polynomial is the answer. But of course, it's not in simplified terms. So hopefully you know already that every single time you simplify, the middle two are going to combine to make a -5x. So now when you write your simplified product, you have your x squared term, which is a 2x squared, your x term, which is -5x, and then your constant is your +3. So here is your product, which we can recognize if it were an equation or a function, it would be a quadratic with an a of 2, a b of -5, and a c of 3. So technically, we don't have to consider this as quadratic or this, since it's not a function, since it doesn't say y equals or f of x equals, but that's the method we're going for here anytime you multiply things. So I'm hoping you finished all 6 of these and you remind yourself about, what you're supposed to do here. As for the factoring review, this is going backwards. So we are taking the answer, which we call the product, after the fact, and we're figuring out the two things that multiplied. So when we have these answer terms, we know they go inside the box. And so we have to do a little bit of puzzling out and thinking what goes here and here and what goes here and here to make these products. So what times what is x squared? Well, we always know it's an x and an x at minimum. And now we have some thinking to do. Something times something is 8. So the two numbers that I choose have to add up to 6x when you combine them. So no matter what, these two things have to combine together to make a 6x. So I could use 8 and 1, but then I would have 8x and 1x, and that's not 6, that's 9. So if I do a 4 times a 2, we're going to see if that works. 4 times x is 4x, x times 2 is 2x, and we see that it does work. We have 6x, which is what it's supposed to be. So you're basically done. You've solved the puzzle, you've solved the riddle, but now you have to write the two factors. So once you find the numbers that go on the side, you have to write this as a single factor in parentheses, factored form, factor, one factor, second parentheses, x plus 2. That's in parentheses with a plus sign. That's in parentheses with a plus sign. We always add a plus sign in the middle of these terms for polynomials. So truly, if you finish the front, you're in good shape. Keep practicing this. Check with your neighbor. If you're having a hard time with the puzzle to figure out which numbers go where, please have a friend help you, or even Miss Vu can help you. Sorry that this is open. Hopefully it's not distracting, but it's open because of the backside. So if you did go to the backside, you'll notice that this is supposed to be memorized. We don't have boxes for these 3. So after you do these 6 extra for practice, This actually was addressed on page 699. This is called the difference of two squares. And this is what happens when you don't have a b value because the b value canceled out. So if you did a lot of practice multiplying the difference of two squares, great. If not, I'm just going to address this definition is right here actually. The difference of two squares says that if you have two factors, an a minus a thing and an a plus a thing, your answer when you put it in a multiplication box, actually, I'm going to do this, maybe you do it along with me. If you multiply a plus b times a minus b, you're always going to get a squared. This was not big enough. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not easy for me. You're always going to get a squared. You're always going to get b times negative b is negative b squared, whatever that number is. And then this would be ab, and this would be negative ab, and no matter what, they'd cancel. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. You're going to have one positive and one minus. So when you have one minus and one plus, the insides will always cancel. And your final answer will just be whatever's up here minus whatever's down here. And we call this the difference. Difference means subtraction of two squares, and those squares are the numbers squared. So here's the definition here. You can look up other videos about it if you'd like, but what it's asking you here is what two numbers multiply to 9 and multiply to 16 that's a perfect square. So I'm just going to do this one for you and hope that it works out. When you factor it, you can just memorize this and do it in your head. You know that if you have a 3x times a 3x, you're going to get 3x squared, or sorry, 9. Yikes, 9x squared. Here's my freaking finger in the way. And then a negative 16, if you have a 4 that's positive and a 4 that's negative, you're going to get negative 16, and then you know that when you do the box method, since these are the exact same, but one is positive and one is negative, they'll cancel because they'll make a 0. So that's what we're going for here. Try these two. 16 would be the number in the front that you start with. And then for this one, 4 is the number in the front that you start with the x's. So see if you can figure out what goes here and here. And then you're just going to keep doing some factoring, except this guess and check method is going to be even harder. I think that Mathia teaches you the method that's not guess and check. So I am going to encourage you right now over video, and I'm also going to put it in Google Classroom. With this learning intention, you need to be doing Mathia. Mathia is not optional. Mathia is part of your learning. Down here, they trick you, just so you know. This is now an equation. So you have your A is 1, your B is 1, and your C is negative 56. So these are the numbers we've been putting into the box. Now the reason this is a little bit separate, and this is going to be our next learning intention, so don't worry if you don't get to this or understand it. The reason that it's equal to 0 is because we need to solve for x. So it asks us to solve for x. So we have to have it equal to 0. This is a trick. If it's not equal to 0, this is not our C value. You have to move anything over that you have so that you have it equals to 0. So when I rewrite this, I have x squared minus 18x plus 81 equals 0, and this is the C value you need to use. So now A is 1 and B is negative 18, but C is actually positive 81, and that's what you're supposed to put down here so that you can solve this correctly. So then you're looking for two numbers that multiply to be 81 and then add to be negative 18. I wonder what they could be, two numbers that multiply to 81 and add to negative 18. And that is it for this worksheet. I will post the key in Google Classroom, I believe maybe Monday night or Tuesday, but this should be something you hang on to. This should be a study guide for a quiz. All of the things on here, this is your main practice for learning intention number 1. So after this, we'll go on to lesson 2 in the book, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, bye.